Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Join my site, get the best news and analysis on the team that you love despite yourself. Team that gave the ball away over and over and over again here. Lost 37-27. 37-27. Had to remember that. I thought it was 24-24 if you measure Titans score against turnover score, the points off turnovers for the Bengals. Bad day here, as everybody out there knows. Brought to you by Edley's Barbecue, best barbecue in town. My brother, my oldest brother, and my other brother, and my brother's wife, and my mother all in town this weekend, Saturday afternoon. My wife, my son, all of us, we went to Edley's Barbecue in Berry Farms in Franklin. Delicious. I advise you to do the same. Load up the family. Head to Edley's. Pig out. Josh immediately wants to know who starts the next 3 games. I think Will Levis. There's no reason to be done with Will Levis. Look, it's a terrible game, a big stain on his resume, another thing that tells you he's not the guy, big reversion to what he did early in the season. But still, you can get 3 more games. I don't understand why you have to be done with him. They're not necessarily hell-bent on winning these games, and I don't see what starting Mason Rudolph does for you here. So I don't really see what it would do for you to start Mason Rudolph. Mike Herndon made a pronunciation that he is done with this regime, this leadership group. And Mike is a patient and thoughtful guy. You read him at paulkuharsky.com on Wednesdays. I was surprised. Is that eye-opening enough for Amy Adams Strunk to fire Rand? You think that Mike Herndon's opinion pieces and tweets are guiding Amy Adams Strunk? I love Mike Herndon. But I don't think he has that kind of power. Sam says, I don't see any scenario where it's acceptable for Levis to be the starter heading into 2025. My question is, will Amy let it be Callahan and Rand selecting the next quarterback? Look, I've sniffed around a little bit lately. I'm not getting any indications that there's any expectation that Amy is thinking about making a change. Now, would people close to that change have a sense that a change is coming? I don't think so. And she's been known to make rash decisions. But I don't think change is coming. I'll be surprised if change is coming. What did attendance look like? Chris Butler wants to know. It was better than the Jacksonville game. There were a decent smattering of Bengals fans around the lower bowl, not like that front row presence on the opposite side of the field. But it was better than it was last game. I do think it would be, look, the money's in the pocket, but if there was an embarrassingly bad crowd for Houston, I don't think it would be impactful, but it can't hurt to be visually embarrassed. What hope does this fan base have? Sam Darnold? This has been such a shit show. I wrote that. Look, Sam Darnold is singularly the best guys coming available in free agency. There's nothing after that. And in free agency, and Shadur Sanders might be topping out in college, and Ward, well, some questions about mechanically. I mean, he's not going to step in next year and be winning right out of the gate. Amy said she was the guy 2 weeks ago. Amy Wells or Amy Adams Strunk? Because Amy Adams Strunk hasn't done any talking. I don't know where she said that, Dave Clark. Fill me in. Vader is curious about Brinkle also. What exactly is his role? Can any of this team's current status be attributed to him? Would change their help at all? Brinker is in charge of the entire football operation. He oversees everything, but he's not in charge of personnel. So Iran is picking the players. And, the coach is obviously coaching. So it's a little bit of an odd role. He makes sure that the stadium is running, that the travel plans are smooth. He's the boss to all of the people that are doing all of that stuff, that the team facility is running, the football operation, all the stuff a GM does except for the personnel. So it's a little bit of a strange job because of that stuff. But aside from that stuff. So CA says he failed the defense during that sequence. I mentioned and looked, it was situationally a failure and momentum change that led to 14-14 and never looked back. I don't know exactly the scenario there. But I mean, the defense allowed conversions on 10 of 13 third downs. So, I mean, obviously that the other team is scoring on a pick six, should have scored on another fumble return, dropped the ball at the 1. And the other team scored 24 points off turnovers, 17 off Will Levis's turnovers is a terrible, terrible thing. Hill, you got to get off of this thing. Time for Amy to sell. I mean, if every bad organization in professional sports owner sold, it would be a completely different landscape of sports in America. It's just not how it works. Bad owners make a shit ton of money. Her team was in the number 1 seed in the playoffs in 2001, which is not eons ago. It's relatively recent. Did you say she wasn't aware of how to run a team then? I bet you loved her then. She was a huge hit then. And bad owners don't sell teams because their fans say, oh, I wish we had a new owner. Vader Jaws, regarding the answer about Brinker, says, so Rand has less to do then, which puts more emphasis on his lack of roster building. I would say that's true. Everybody hit retweet. If you're watching on YouTube, give a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're listening later on Apple, on iHeart, on Spotify, like, rate, subscribe, do all of that stuff. And that's fine. Aunt, that's how things work with rich people. Aunt complained she was given this team. She was given this team, and they've had several bad years in a row, and therefore she must sell it? I mean, what kind of logic is that? My father gave me, some stuff, or I got some of his stuff when he died. Because I was given it, if I'm bad with it, I must give it away? Like, what sense does that make? Very poor coaching staff, and it's showing. I mean, there's certainly you can make arguments about what Brian Callahan is and isn't doing. I think he gets time. What do I think of Levis this week? In this game, I thought he was horrible. Clearly he was horrible. He got benched, and he deserved it. I don't know that you could argue this. Chris said he would argue this team has more holes going into next year than it did at the end of last year. Well, this team, I think if you got a right tackle, at least one edge rusher, and a wide receiver, and you got people healthy, you could make the case that it's whole. Probably a safety, maybe inside linebacker. But they have a center that they didn't have the year before in Cushenberry when he's healthy. They have a number 2 receiver, which they didn't have before, in Ridley. They have 2 running backs, which they didn't have before. They didn't need before, obviously. But there was going to be a hole with Henry gone, so they fixed that hole. They have a left tackle. He's not playing well, but he's a much better player than the 2 left tackles they had previously. I don't think you can make that case at all. I just don't understand, Austin. Why should he be gone? Like, why wouldn't you play him these 3 games? Because you're mad at him because he played a very bad game? That doesn't make much sense to me to bench Levis for these 3 games out of fan anger. It's not good business. David Clark says, I had the pleasure of watching the game with Amy Adams Strunk during the Viking games, and she felt Levis was the future. A lot can change in 3 games. Well, I need you to email me, David Clark, and let's have a conversation about that. Let's get that on the record somewhere instead of just talking about it in this chat. pkuharsky@gmail.com. Derek says, I think any fan should have expected this year to have been difficult. First-year coach, an inexperienced quarterback, an offensive line that needs a lot of development. We just weren't ready to compete. If we upgrade the offensive line, I don't think the team is that far away from playing better. I think it's unreasonable to say that fans should have expected this year to be this difficult. A 3-win team got potential to maybe win against two bad teams going down the road. But I think it's ridiculous for them to spend as much as they spent, $180 million guaranteed on the 12 guys that I count as significant additions, and not to have expected it to get significantly better. At least play better, maybe not win more games, but play better than this. I mean, you guys, if that's your thinking, they should spend $180 million guaranteed on this free agent class and don't expect it to be significantly better. I don't understand why you would give them such a free pass. How many years, Robert says, do we have to focus on upgrading the offensive line? I would hope only one more year. I would hope there's a right tackle and a right guard solution coming between free agency and the draft next year, and that Latham makes great strides. Kuharsky with a year in Bill Callahan's system make great strides. You might be slowed down at center a little bit depending on the recovery timetable of Cushenberry, but then with those two guys, I think they're fine. In my view, what's the first year of Callahan like compared to Whisenhunt? I haven't looked at the numbers now, but when I looked at the numbers compared to Whisenhunt's numbers, this team actually was statistically worse. I mean, it's a much more pleasant place for players, a much better work environment. I think if you're getting the bad results, you'd rather be on this team than on that team. Sam says, none of the big additions are playing poorly, really. Most of the reason for the team's success are Levis and positions they didn't get around to, right tackle. Most of the team's additions, several of them are not around. L'Jarius Sneed's not around. Awuzie wasn't around for a long time. Cushenberry's not around. Diggs isn't around. There are four right there that are AWOL because of injuries. Pollard has been the best player on the team. Ridley is more of a 2 than a 1. So, I mean, he's been effective since he's gotten through those early season troubles. But he had the early season troubles, which don't go away. And he makes bonehead plays like running out of bounds on 3rd and 5 after he gains 2 yards, which is a killer. But I would say, and it sounds like Sam's in agreement here, that if they address the few big positions that they didn't address last year, right tackle, edge, I think he would add. I know Sam, and we're in a discussion group together. A more dynamic young wide receiver. I mean, I think if you added those 3 things to this mix, and now, quarterback, but I don't know that's a quarterback. That's an immediate or definite upgrade. I think the next stage of additions should be a big jump. I don't expect they're going into next season with Radens at right guard. I think they're getting a new starting right guard. It was Rand's first off season where he wasn't handcuffed. Rand's first offseason handcuffed by the head coach on personnel choices. Well, that first offseason, we don't know what variable was influencing or what he wasn't influencing. I have done reporting that tells me that everybody was in lockstep on Levis. They all liked Levis where they took Levis. Titans have another good salary cap situation coming up this offseason. So, they should sell. I mean, Michael says, I think we should focus on free agency for that right tackle and veteran quarterback. Edge rushers and guard will be plentiful in the draft. Well, the guard has to come later. You can't predetermine it not knowing who's there. I mean, you want to focus on getting the quarterback. You want to focus on getting the quarterback in the in free agency. Well, let me give you a list of who the quarterbacks in free agency are. I mean, don't you have to know who they are in order to make that determination? The free agent market, free agent market of quarterbacks: Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett, Taylor Heineke, Marcus Mariota, Drew Lock, Jarrett Stidham, Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, Mac Jones, Carson Wentz, Jimmy Garoppolo, Case Keenum, Mason Rudolph, Easton Stick, Cooper Rush, Josh Dobbs. And it gets worse from there. So which of these guys do you feel is the big solution for the Titans now that you've declared that the Titans should go and solve their quarterback problem in free agency? Michael, I'd be curious to know. Like, you got to know who the options are before you declare the path. Find a way to get Darnold or Herbert. Well, Darnold is a free agent, so maybe he gets tagged and maybe he's a free agent. Find a way to get Herbert. I mean, why would Harbaugh be giving up Herbert? Find a way to get Mahomes, and find a way to get Allen. Easy as that. Shouldn't it be considered a failure on Rand that we knew we needed an edge, a right tackle, and linebackers last year, but didn't address it? And then wouldn't you know, those are the big holes again this year. Well, they had a hole virtually everywhere, TK. So if you're getting a right tackle, you're taking away something that they got. So what do you want to take away? The center that they got, the running back that they got, the receiver that they got. I mean, there's a limited pool of players at all of these positions. And there's only had so many draft picks. Now, yeah, they should have gotten some kind of veteran right tackle, who's better than Petit Frere. That's easy to say in hindsight. But one offseason to address like virtually every single position on the roster is a difficult thing to do. I still think it's dangerous to pronounce that Levis isn't the starter or a starting option here next year. They knew Snead had a bad knee, and we had D-Hop, says Hill. Well, D-Hop is not a young, dynamic wide receiver, so he doesn't fit what I'm talking about. Young, dynamic receivers are pouring into the league. And the Titans' attempt at that was Traylon Burks, which was a massive fail. Outside of that, they've drafted later guys. They traded up for fucking Dez Fitzpatrick. That's the best attempt they've made at a wide receiver. They drafted Jaquan Jackson, who can't stay on the game day active roster, as a return man. They knew Snead had a bad knee, but Snead's not out with a bad knee. He's out with a quad. Snead signing was brutal in year one. Not only no production, but the third rounder we sent them is very high due to our horrible record. That's right. So, I mean, that trade looks horrific now. Looks horrific. S. Rob says there's really no quarterback available of quality. How does Callahan survive season 2 when there's no real super improvement available? Well, you get a better receiver, better pass protection, and play better defense, and all of those things make any quarterback better. Chig is finally performing well again. Should we be optimistic the way coaches are drawing up more plays for him? I think they should get a better tight end, personally. Amazing how I think Amy Adams Strunk is such a good owner. Jared, you're not listening. The fact that I say she's not going to sell or that 4 years ago they had great success, that's not me saying she's a great owner. That's me saying don't be naive about saying we don't like our owner, so she should sell. No owner has ever sold a team under those circumstances. And B, like, if you think you're a long-suffering fan of a team that had the number 1 seed 3 or 4 years ago, you've completely lost perspective. I don't think she's done a good job as owner since she fired J-Rob. I wasn't the one saying, oh, Miss Amy is the greatest. Miss Amy, she's at the tailgates eating my chili and signing my autograph. That wasn't me. That was you guys. But to say that she act as if the league is going to intervene and make her sell is absolutely ridiculous. Got to be involved in sexual harassment to be forced to sell. How does Rand sit at his end of season presser and pitch to team management and the fans that he's actually doing a good job and should be retained? He doesn't have to pitch to fans that he needs to be retained. He needs to pitch to one person. And I don't think he goes in and says, hey, don't fire me. I think he presumes he's not getting fired, and answers her questions. Sam Darnold today is an upgrade from Levis as he is now. Of course he is. But Sam Darnold's also the one good quarterback coming to market. A, there'll be competition for him if he reaches market. B, they could tag him conceivably, which makes it mean you have to trade for him if that happens. I'm not convinced that happens because it would really freeze the Vikings with the cap. But of course he's better than Levis. It doesn't mean that you can automatically get him. There are a whole bunch of teams that would like to have Sam Darnold. Yeah, Chris says Darnold. Of course Darnold's better, but people are saying go the free agent route. Well, if there's one free agent on the free agent route, it's pretty hard to get the one free agent. Russell Wilson will be available, Michael says. Well, you think the Steelers are going to be anxious to move on from Russell Wilson? I think Russell Wilson probably like to stay in Pittsburgh. And Sam says, if you're signing a quarterback, it's a Band-Aid. Lose out and you have a shot at Sanders. I'm not sold on Sanders. And if they lose out, you're counting on the Giants not losing out. Giants look pretty damn shitty. Raiders not losing out. That looks pretty damn shitty. And some other teams not losing out who are still ahead of the Titans in the draft order. The Titans are 5th when I came in here. So 4 teams ahead of them. At least 2 of them quarterback needy, and the potential for teams to trade into that. Now, the Titans could trade into that, but you want the Titans to give up these picks. They're already without a third. Moving up is going to cost them, at least their second, maybe next year's first. And those are the picks you'd be using to get the left tackle, the edge rusher, and the receiver that we're talking about. Now, I'd give up those picks if I'm going to get a guy that looks like a sure thing quarterback. If I'm talking about Arch Manning, you'd make that trade no problem. Nobody's trading out of Arch Manning, number one. And number two, there's no Arch Manning in this draft. I mean, it's a lot harder today to like Will Levis than it is yesterday. But is he done? I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't play him in the remaining 3 games here, and I think he's still very much in the picture for next year. Yeah, the thing, Rand traded for linebacker Ernest Jones, then traded him away, and from what you're hearing as a Seahawk fan, he's thriving with them. Look, Titans weren't very good at the point they traded away Ernest Jones and DeAndre Hopkins. They got themselves some draft capital. Ernest Jones, they probably weren't going to sign an inside linebacker at what Ernest Jones is going to sign for and what Ernest Jones is going to want. And, people want them to tank, wanted them to trade people on the roster at that stage than they do, and you're complaining about it. I think, I liked Ernest Jones a lot. I think he would have been a great defensive leader on this team and a good player, but they would have had 11 games of him at that stage, and I can't blame them. They got a pretty good return of him. Don't I think Callahan's got to be out of Levis for next year? We can't independently say get out of Levis without having a replacement for Levis. So you say free Callahan from Levis. Well, okay, but who's the alternative to Levis? How certain are we that the alternative to Levis is better? Are you going to pay 10, 12, 22, $32 million for the alternative to Levis when he's this much better than Levis? Or, does he need to be this much better than Levis? Well, I think he needs to be, you got to put that all in the equation. And I don't know how many guys out there are substantially better than Levis. And if you're talking about a rookie, well, that's going to take time. Are you guys in a hurry? Or are you going to be patient? There's a lot of stuff that goes into the equation here. got a text here to answer. Sorry. Merck says, we have nothing to lose by playing Levis the rest of the way. Of course not. Of course not. And CW showing some reason. Levis has 2 awful interceptions, but I think he can still be very good in the system he's more experienced in and have better help around him. My thing is, you don't know when the duds are going to appear. And Callahan kind of said, like, well, this happens with quarterbacks where they have a bad game and you bench them. Like, you got to have a better standard for quarterbacks where that's not in the equation, that benching him. Well, Chris says Titans really need a slot receiver. Look at the elite offenses in the league, and they have a dynamic playmaker in the slot. You don't have to build your team the way the elite teams in the league are built. You can build an elite team that's a little bit different. If the Titans have a terrific high pick and Ridley and re-sign NWI, well, you can play a variety of guys in the slot. Hopefully the guy you draft can play in the slot. Ridley can play in the slot. Westbrook could be in the slot sometimes. But, I wouldn't say go draft a slot because most slots are smaller. And I would prefer an ideal height, weight, speed wide receiver. I don't know that much about this receiving class yet. Again, Sam, you can say pretty obvious Callahan isn't having a fun year. Doubt he wants to bank 2025 on Levis. Who does he want to bank him on? He'd like to bank on Joe Burrow. He doesn't have Joe Burrow. Who? The pass pressure today, by the way, was just atrocious. I mean, that first touchdown pass to Chase Brown, he had like 9.01 seconds. Stat Service told me that was the 3rd longest time to throw. Second longest time to throw was Drake May's touchdown that tied the New England game at the end before the Titans went on to win in overtime. Spears was better today. Might as well just use him as a receiver and don't give him carries. I mean, Spears carries today. 4 carries, 5 yards, 1.3. Just throw it to him. 6 catches on 7 targets, 87 yards, 14.5 average. Very nice with the touchdown. Got 2 touchdowns. I had to play him in a fantasy league. That was terrific. Although it's unrealistic, Guitar Metal Demon says, although it's unrealistic to fire Callahan before the 2025 season, assuming they fire him after year 2, would Rand also get the boot since he's the architect of the current regime? I certainly think if and when the time comes to change regimes, you got to get a coach and a GM on the same timetable. Titans have too frequently not had their 2 main guys on the same timetable, and that's a problem. Get them on the same timetable. Retweeted that to see what's going on. Let me get back in here. Thanks all of you for coming. Become a member of paulkuharsky.com. Good stuff coming this week. I got a piece on Nick Folk and kicker accuracy and what's gone into it beyond kickers getting better. Some interesting stuff that I haven't heard talked about anywhere. Eat at Edley's Barbecue, 8 local locations, couple in Franklin. That's my home base, but East Nashville is where I broadcast this show on Thursday afternoons in the middle of the Titans, during Titans practice. Just the best food around. I would eat it every day if I could. Check it out. If you're a regular, make an extra stop. If you're not a regular, head on over there. Check out Zen Sports as well and Tennessee Roofing Concepts, all key sponsors of mine. It's clear what this team is lacking: playmakers. Regardless of position, this team needs playmakers. Absolutely. And, look, you could talk about offensive linemen being a playmaker, but playmakers generally have their hands on the ball or have their hands on the person who has their hands on the ball. But, they lack speed and playmakers, and they need a lot of that. Earlier this year, there was a lot of talk the Rams wanted to do some contract purging and trade Stafford. I'd love that, but like the Titans always are, they probably don't have the capital to trade for him without handicapping the rest of free agency and the team in general. Never mind the rest of free agency, the rest of the draft. Trading for Matthew Stafford's going to cost you a couple prime picks, and if you give away a couple prime picks, then you're not getting the tackle, the edge, the receiver. Jason's got a lot to say here. Too many holes on this team to blame it on the quarterback. It's like one famous YouTuber said, you put Patrick Mahomes out there on our team or Josh Allen. It's too much. Too much. And I doubt he's a famous YouTuber. Where do we find a wide receiver one via free agency or the draft? I haven't looked at wide receiver free agents, but look, top guys at top positions, receiver, left tackle, edge rusher, quarterback, are not making it to free agency. And so you've got to leave free agency to fill secondary holes, build through the draft. Josh says drafting Travis Hunter would help their receiver room. He'd be a true number one receiver. No, he would not. He's looked at by most in the league as a cornerback who would play a little bit of wide receiver, not a wide receiver who would play a little bit of cornerback. Can this team stop with the all about me celebrations, especially with their record and when losing big in the game? I got destroyed when I asked if people wanted to see Jeffrey Simmons celebrating, forcing an incompletion down 10 late in the game. Everybody said, yes, we want to see him trying hard. They confuse trying hard with celebrating. Jeff Simmons always tries hard, plays hard. Respect that he plays hard. Apparently, this generation of young people playing hard equates with celebrating hard. I don't want to see it. I think it's bullshit. If you're losing that badly, go make the play, get back in the fucking huddle, go make the next play. But apparently I'm wrong, and I'm an old man screaming at a cloud. What has Carthon done that should be commended? Does it outweigh his misses? Well, I mean, batting average for GMs is not high, generally speaking. What has he done? Well, I mean, Latham is going to be a player. He's struggling right now, but he's definitely going to be a player. Sweat is 366 pounds, and he picked up the ball and ran 30 yards with it. You're not going to see many guys like that around the league. He picked those two guys. He picked Brownlee. Those are three, that's not a bad draft right there. He's in on Kuharsky. He's in on Levis. So, say what you will about those guys. He traded 2 third-round picks, which is too many. I would, say he doesn't have a great resume. If Shador is your guy, well, I think Shador is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. So I don't know how you're getting up to number 1 pick. And Snyder, I think you're talking about Dan Snyder. He's not fired. You can't fire an owner. He was forced out by his fellow owners, and there was some bad internal shit going on. There's not bad internal shit going on in the Titans. I don't think that J.J. McCarthy is going to be on the block. I think Minnesota, if they were to re-sign Darnold, it's not going to be long term. I don't see them re-signing Darnold when they invested the 11th pick or whatever it was in McCarthy. Jason, you got to shorten those up. I can't spend a big chunk of podcast reading a huge long comment. Titan Kong says, in his opinion, he feels like Amy's not been the greatest owner, but I don't think she's a bad owner. I believe she's trying, and the people under her are failing her. Well, she's hired the people under her. She's not done a very good job of that. She fired a GM during the season, which doesn't make much sense. I mean, you want to fire John Robinson, I don't see why you wouldn't wait until the end of the season. That's a very impulsive move. Firing Vrabel instead of getting control of Vrabel is not a very strong move. Would I rather have Carthon and Levis or Ballard and Richardson for 2 more years? Well, I'd rather have Carthon and Levis, and I'm not a big Carthon guy, but Carthon's at least unproven. Ballard is pretty proven. I don't like Richardson at all. I'm not huge into Levis, but there's my choice. Arch Manning, Brandon says, is our only hope, and he's 2 years away. Plus, you can't get in position for him. Absolutely. What incentive does Amy have to improve the team when fans from opposing teams fill the stadium and spend money while Titans fans stay home? The organization makes a lot of money even when they're terrible. Well, the stadium's not full. I mean, it wasn't full today. It was fuller than it was last week. But what incentive does she have? Well, she's got incentive to win. She says she'd like to win. I think she's got some personal pride. Titans fall off after the first quarter this season is a serious coaching issue. Callahan isn't showing any improvement. Yes, it's a problem. It is a problem. Rudolph might mess around and win a game or two if you have to play Levis. That's not the reason. Jason, I can't read these enormous things. Break it down into a small comment or question. Titans should forget wearing the Oilers throwbacks during the regular season finale. Why? Thoughts on Justin Fields? He's bad. Cheapest contract if you're bringing in some options to compete, but it's hard to get excited about him. I like the idea of Travis Hunter. He's pretty small. Cornerback is not the Titans' primary need, and he's not going to be a full-time receiver. I would like a full-time receiver. So if they're in position for Travis Hunter, which I don't think they're going to be either, I would rather them get out of position for Travis Hunter and let somebody else have him and maximize a pick a little bit later. Well, here, David says, I don't see Callahan surviving if they don't get off to a good start next year. He's not showing me much this year as a coach. Well, good start means what? If they're 1-4, they're going to fire a guy 5 games into the season. It's too fast, I think. What if you tried to fix the horrific defense instead? Tennessee Truth says. You're stuck with Levis and a bad offensive line. Well, you're not stuck with a bad offensive line. They can make moves at right tackle and right guard. Try to win 17-14 next year and go 7-9 and then hope you find your franchise quarterback somehow. I don't think your overall thing is bad, but you don't have to concede that you're bad at offensive line or at tight end. You can improve those positions it's not hard to address those positions. And they certainly need to address the pass rush. Pass rush is very bad. Very, very bad. See ya, Mr. Chesney. This game today, CW says, it seemed to all go off the cliff with that fumble. What a total train wreck that was. Bad fumble. Hurtful fumble. What if the Browns release Watson? I don't know why they'd be releasing Watson. What if the Rams make Stafford available via trade? He's grasping for straws, I know, looking for a quick potential fix. Well, those guys are both certainly better than what they have. Stafford's going to be very expensive. Deshaun Watson? You don't want anything to do with Deshaun Watson. Nothing to do with Deshaun Watson. Fans complaining about Amy, Andrew said, is laughable. I wish she did more interviews, but it's her team and the NFL doesn't require it. Give up this cash cow because we don't like the way the team is performing? Laugh out loud. Vader says, similar to prior questions on what fans can be hopeful for, what's the best, most realistic expectation we can have for next season? Broad year to drafting a quarterback in 2026. I think that next season, this team, you should expect them to be 8-9 or 9-8. I don't see why that's not possible. I don't know. Michael Elliott Rice says, I also think Ben Johnson was the preferred choice as head coach, but he chose to stay in Detroit. Is that accurate to say? I mean, a lot of people liked Ben Johnson for their coaching options, but I don't think he was ever a realistic option here. So I don't know if they know him well enough to say he was their preferred choice because they didn't get to talk to him. Well, Titan Kong said, or Andrew Thurman, or Titan Kong says that thing is I really believe Amy is trying to build a winning team. Do we think she knows how to build a winning team? Like, what proof do we have that she knows how to build a winning team? She had Robinson and Vrabel for a time who were good together. And so those looked like good hires. But then things went to shit and she didn't know how to handle their egos. And since then, she hasn't shown that she knows how to hire. I don't think she has confidants that are helpful to her. And I think she's made rash moves. So I don't think that has to do with her unwillingness to talk to the press. I think her moves are being judged, and fairly so. Do I see a scenario where Amy fires Rand and then lets the new GM decide if he wants to keep Callahan? Probably not. And, you know, where's Brinker and all of that? What does the great Paul K., who hates the Titans, think they should do to fix the team's issues? I hate the Titans because the Titans are 3-11, and I'm critical of the Titans. Patriots Funding Solutions is in the wrong podcast. Well, if you have KPO asks, if you hire a GM and coach at the same time, how can the GM help choose the coach? Well, if you decide I'm going to have a GM-centric team, so I hire the GM and the GM is going to help me hire the coach, then the GM helps you hire the coach or hires the coach. You give them that. Then the GM is the coach's boss, but they're still on the same timetable and they're obligated to work together, and they don't get to a finger pointing situation because they're on the same timetable. So the GM can't say, well, this is the coach's fault. He did this before I got here. Or the GM can't say, well, the coach can't say, this is the GM's fault. This wasn't mine. I had nothing to do with this. You don't have anything that's off kilter like that because they're working from the start together. So it's very much more difficult for one of them to cast something on the other guy when things go badly in 3 years. Now, when they're off like this, and Carthon and Callahan are on different things, I know they're collaborating brilliantly here, but already in the fan base, there's a huge split. Well, this was Rand's thing, and this was Vrabel's thing, and this is going to be Callahan's thing. And nobody knows in the public, and it's a huge thing of conversation all the time, and it bogs the franchise down. And if you think those things don't extend into the franchise when things get really tough and jobs are on the line, you're wrong. This is what brings down front offices and coaching staffs, and it's smoother if the two things are aligned. It's harder for one guy to blame the other guy if from the start they're choosing a quarterback together. Even if the GM has a personnel power, if they come in at the same time and the GM is trying to shape things for the coach's program and all of that, well, that's fine. It's harder for them to become divided. Poor old line play has certainly hurt Levis. Richardson is a worse quarterback than Levis, I think, and he's far less reliable. If the Vikings don't want Darnold, why would the Titans want Darnold? We don't realize that two teams can be in different positions. The Vikings are good, and they drafted a young quarterback with a high pick, having envisioned him in their system and deciding that he was going to be their long-term guy. The Titans don't have that guy. and don't have that pick and don't have their roster to bring that guy into for everything to be good around them. So if Darnold's available strictly for money, he can be attractive to one team and not to another team. That's a pretty naive question, Dixie, whose name I hate. Tony prefers Levis over Lawrence, Stroud, and Richardson. He's crazy. He thinks that he has the next Troy Aikman. He has all the physical tools. Well, it doesn't matter if he has all the physical tools from here down if he doesn't have the mental tools from here up. And you can only have so much time until the mental part develops for the physical part to be relevant. We've seen lots of guys with physical tools not paying out because they have insufficient mental game. And he has insufficient mental game. There are people who, somebody at the executive level has to talk. I am expecting that we're going to hear from both Rand and Chad after the season is over. It makes Jeremy sick sitting here thinking about how out on Rand he is, and then hear news J-Rob is interviewing for the Jets GM job. J-Rob should fall into oblivion. I mean, J-Rob has to do a hell of a sales pitch to sell himself to a franchise given his late drafts, and New York will pick him apart, his resume apart, as he's interviewed and as he gets that job. Yes, Titans Kong says, Amy's hired these people, but who's to say what these people have said to her in order to get a bag from her? So she's falling for false stories. I believe that's possible with Rand, but she's got to sort through people bullshitting her, isn't she? That's what top executives do. They don't get bullshitted. They don't get bullshit by people looking for jobs. Doesn't mean she still doesn't have the best intentions for this team. I've never said she didn't have the best intentions for this team. Why are you putting words into my mouth? She has the best intentions, but not the best record. I mean, that's not the best hiring record for sure. This team has been miserable to watch for the last 2 years. How the hell can we turn it around? Good question. A lot of different ramifications and avenues they could take, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Tyler just is willing to give Rand. It just didn't work out. Just didn't work out. You spent $180 million in guaranteed money. It just didn't work out. It's very passive. Well, here, look, I said this when he signed all these free agents. Odds of them all working out in one season, very low. So Tyler's just going to say, well, you bring all those guys back, and next season they're all going to work out, which isn't going to happen. So next year, you think Snead and Awuzie and Cushenberry, Diggs probably be out because he's old, and Pollard, and who am I forgetting? This whole free agent class is going to suddenly all be good at the same time. It's not how it works. So somebody else will get hurt or have a dud year or whatever. Burrow was hit 6 times, which is remarkable, but the hits were pretty irrelevant. He got sacked once by Landry, and it's the play on which Tavondre Sweat stripped the ball and ran for 30 yards. Outside of that, they looked like they were setting the world record for trying to give guys the time. Somebody's asking, I don't want to put him in here, why do I think Levis is the main issue when the Titans didn't get a solid right tackle? Good quarterbacks make plays despite not great protection. Sacks are, to a decent degree, quarterback stat. Have to be able to play under pressure. There's no perfect pockets in the NFL, very rarely. You can get some snaps where you get a great protection. Most of the time, not. You have to learn to deal with it. How about asking Cincinnati for Browning? Cincinnati's got good depth at quarterback. I'm sure they're dying to give it away so that when Joe Burrow twists his knee, they don't have good depth. All right, 3 more questions, and we're calling it. Thanks for all of you for coming. I appreciate it. Good talking, as always. All she wants is the money, says Ron Topinka. Well, most owners of profitable companies want to make money. I don't get this. She's only worried about hosting visiting owners. I don't know what indicates that. I mean, what were you saying about her in 2021 when they had the number 1 seed? Was she only interested in these things then, everyone? Well, I mean, here, somebody's saying, can I speak on the Levis fumble? Was it his fault because he fumbles, or do you give him a pass because they were in the backfield in under 2 seconds? Obviously, the 3 interceptions were his fault. Well, he threw the one ball behind Nick Westbrook-Akine, but he shouldn't be batting the ball up in the air under any circumstances. So I give Levis a little bit of a break on that one. You can't fumble no matter how quickly you get hit, but you can't get hit in 2 seconds. So it's not one guy's fault. It's multiple guys' fault. Andrew was less than impressed with the Bengals today. Well, the Bengals aren't very good this year. I mean, what did they just get to, 5-8? I mean, they have a good offense, but Burrow didn't play his best today, which sucks for my fantasy team. Titans are bad, but the Bengals have a good quarterback and wide receiver 1. You made their defense look great today. I don't see them making it to the playoffs. But this is no, revelation. The Bengals have been, a long shot to make the playoffs for most of the season. They've not had a good season. No, I think J-Rob should have gotten one more season to try to dig himself out of things. But there's no reason to fire J-Rob during the season. No reason to fire J-Rob during the season. General managers' moves during the season are not make or break moves, anything. There's nothing you're doing. You're signing street free agents. You're manipulating the practice squad, all of that. She totally could have waited until after the season. That's an impulsive move. And who cares what the fan base wants? You don't make moves as an owner to respond to the fan base. You don't make moves as a coach or a GM to respond to the fan base. That's little kid stuff. The line did a decent job today. Why does the line not look as bad when Rudolph is playing? I mean, Levis only got sacked once, I think. Pass protection was reasonably good today. I mean, Levis wasn't wildly on the run. They only gave up 1 sack for 7 yards of Levis. Rudolph is better at certain things than Levis is, certainly. Darrell would take Zach Wilson over Levis any day. I think Zach Wilson actually has a chance to be one of those guys that resurfaces, kind of like Darnold or Baker have. They did beat the Titans. And he's been, with a good coach in a good program. Dak Prescott's not going anywhere. He signed a monster contract. Brandon says he really enjoyed the piece on Mason Kinsey in the background of how finances work for fringe players. Being a CPA, need more of this. Well, I covered a lot of it right there. There's not a lot more. Thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoyed writing that. I appreciated Mason's willingness to share all of that. Jackson Dart. I mean, Jackson Dart, more likely to miss than make, but, if you went to your school, I imagine you like him. I said I was only taking one more. Jack likes Levis, but today he played terrible. Like his play just fell off a cliff. 3 turnovers in 7 plays. It's unacceptable. It certainly is. I'll end on this. Vader Jaws. Paul, if Brinker speaks, can I ask him how Rand's performance impacts his own job and results, i.e. low fan attendance, spend on team, etc.? I'm sure we'll cover that area. Darnold was very subpar in New York and Carolina. I wouldn't want him here. Well, the Jets, a dysfunctional team. Carolina, I don't remember the circumstances there. He went to San Francisco, and the 49ers, a very good organization, liked him a lot. And he's played well in Minnesota. So you don't want Darnold. That's fine. They don't get Darnold. Who do you want? Somebody's going to have to play quarterback here. 3 words from Fatty Matty. Let Rand cook. Those biting you in the ass or what? There's still a lot of let Rand cook guys. I appreciate so many of you coming out. Eat at Edley's Barbecue. Sign up for paulkuharsky.com. It's a pittance, $7.50 a month. one less cocktail, one less cup of coffee, or you can just simply afford it. Lots of good stuff coming. Blake Bedingfield will break down this game. 19-year scout of the Titans. He'll tell you some details that we haven't thought about as he breaks down the film. Mike Herndon will have something on Wednesday coming out of this. As I said, something coming on Nick Folk and how kicking has changed over his career beyond kickers just getting better. I appreciate all of you. Don't block the box, and please be sure to lock your locks. Take care.